I think this is one of the first games I've played that had me dying close to 400 times while also keeping me coming back for more punishment. This is Mandragora, Whispers of the Witch Tree. It's a metroid souls-like set in a dark fantasy world full of archmages, witches, zombies, werewolves, and these dumb little imps that carry bombs around and then explode while yelling bomb. You play as an inquisitor serving the king priest. You've been sent out on a mission to kill a witch and rid the world of any heretics that may exist. You'll play through the story and find that the world isn't like what the king priest has told all of his citizens. I think this is probably one of my favorite stories from a Souls-like game, but the standouts for what kept me coming back to the game was the combat, the camp progression, and the overall exploration. So let's chat about the combat itself. It feels exactly like a 2D Souls-like game with a bunch of platforming. I loved nearly every single moment of the combat and didn't feel like I was being forced to play a specific style throughout the game. You start out the game by picking an initial class, giving you a direction to start with. I started off with the Nightshade, which is essentially an assassin, but the closer towards the end of the game I got, I swapped to being more of a warrior, which it kind of suited my playstyle a bit more and meant that I could also hold a fire relic, allowing me to use different fire skills. It was really cool being able to swap it up as I got better gear and different abilities. Also felt like it was less punishing than being an assassin. With all the different abilities, weapons, and skills, it took a while to figure out which skills I liked and which ones I didn't, and I do wish there was more of a chance to see how each different class felt before picking for the first time. It also made me a little bit hesitant to swap to using magic, which I feel would have its benefits in a game like this. Despite being a side scroller, the combat didn't feel like it was lacking in depth. Each enemy type felt unique in their own way, whether it was the attack combos or the speed of their attacks or just how they felt when you were going up against them. I do think the standout in the combat was the boss battles. I struggled a bunch against some of the bosses, but felt like they were all pretty balanced except for the final boss, but I'll unpack that a little bit later. One of the other core parts that stood out to me was the different characters that joined your camp. You start off by meeting a blacksmith on the road who takes you to a safe haven at a place called the Witch's Tree. This is where characters you meet throughout the game will be able to join your humble little camp and help you on quests. You can get an alchemist, tailor, occultist, jeweler, cook, and a treasure hunter. At each character, you'll be able to purchase raw materials, which can then be crafted at one of the characters into usable gear. To unlock new gear to craft, you'll need to find diagrams out of the world and then bring them back to the crafter for them to learn the item. My only complaint was that the crafting was blocked by having to get the camp characters to certain levels, and then you were able to craft the item. To level them up, you either needed to find more diagrams or have them craft other items, which felt like it wasn't in line with the rest of the game's progression because nothing else was blocked behind levels. I still really enjoyed learning more about each character and unlocking their unique storylines as I progressed further. Apparently, your choices can also impact whether or not they join your camp. I managed to get all of them, but I have seen others talk about how they didn't manage to get the occultist as he died before he could join. There wasn't many things the game didn't do well from my perspective, but there were a couple of moments that I didn't really enjoy. The main one was the fact that the Witch's Stones, which are essentially your respawn locations, were never really outside the boss fight areas, meaning if you died, there was usually a few enemies to get past first, or you just had to end up learning how to platform your way back in the most optimal way possible. It just created an extra barrier, making it feel tedious to reattempt certain bosses, and it was extremely frustrating against two-stage bosses like the final boss. I do want to talk about the final boss, and I don't want to spoil anything for you, so feel free to jump ahead to the timestamp shown if you don't want to have the final boss battle spoiled. I really didn't like the final boss. My first issue was the respawn location. The fact that you spawned further away but also had to use a lift, jump past two different sets of enemies, and then do some pointless parkour movements just made it feel like it was a chore having to get back to fight the King Priest. Secondly, the second phase feels so out of place for the game. The fact that you have to defeat the King Priest while essentially healing Mandragora didn't match the rest of the game. It was the first time we had to complete multiple objectives at once in a fight while also having to parkour to avoid attacks that did damage outside of the models. It did make it feel super satisfying to beat him, but it also made me question if I actually wanted to finish the game, as it all just added up to making the boss super frustrating. Overall, I absolutely loved Mandragora. I had about 35 hours of playtime within almost a week. I was pretty much jumping in whenever I had a chance. It's a perfect game for anyone that enjoys platformers, metroid games, or Souls-like games. It does have its moments of frustration, but what Souls-like games doesn't. So where would I place Mandragora? It's an A tier game for me. I loved it and I can't wait for any future content that may come out in the future. It does have its moments where it's frustrating, but I could get through it. So there's my endgame verdict of Mandragora. If you enjoyed this style, let me know, or if there's anything you'd like to see change for future reviews, let me know as well. I'll catch you in the next one.